Alright, this is a library management system. Let me show you what it does. So, suppose you are running a library and you have a new book stock. Let's say the author is Robert Greene, and you can enter his email and from which country he does come from, and click on add author. Once you add author, you will see I'm going to add a book. Let's say 48 Laws of Power, and I have to select the added author. Here in this case it's Robert Greene, and I have total 10 copies for now. If I click add book, you'll see the book gets added at the bottom. So 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene, and I have 10 copies of this book, and no one has borrowed this book as of now, so available copies is 10. Now let's say a guy has come, and that guy name is anything. You can give, let's say Pradeep has come, and he has submitted his phone email address, and he has submitted his phone number, and where does he live. And if I click add member, you will see the member has also added. So in this bottom table you will find books and the member. So member is listed over here. Pradeep, his email address, his phone number. If you want to remove him, you can just click on this button and it will get removed, and that's gone. Now suppose a guy Vishal has come to purchase a book or come to borrow a book. It's called Richest Man in Babylon, and he has purchased. The issue date is today, and his deadline is he said he'll give this book by 3 days, in 3 days. So it's 26, and if I click issue book, you'll see in the borrowing record the guy for Vishal has borrowed the book Richest Man in Babylon, and this is the date that he has that the library has issued, and this is the due date that he need to submit this book. And now, as I said, you'll see in the book you will find we have Richest Man in Babylon. Total we had 10 copies. Right now we have just 9 copies. Let's say likewise another man who is Ramesh. So you'll see this drop down is getting populated by the members that we have. Ramesh has come, and again he has asked for the book Richest Man in Babylon, and his issue date is 23, and he said he will be giving this book in 3 days. And if I click on issue book, and you'll see the total book, previously it were 10 copies, now it is 8 copies. Now we can take a note that at present which book is more famous, and which is out of stock. So by this available copies you'll get to know which book is out of stock. Now let's say Vishal has come. So as of now only two member out of let's say 1 2 3 4 5 out of 6 members, we have only 2 members who has purchased our book or borrowed the book. So let's say Vishal has come to return a book. So as I select, you will find the name. If I select name, you'll see the relevant book which he has purchased show up. Ramesh has come to return the book Richest Man in Babylon, and his date is like, let's say he has submitted today itself. And if I click on return book, you'll see the record getting updated saying that the guy Ramesh has borrowed the book Richest Man in Babylon on this date, and his due date was 3 days, but he has submitted the book today itself, and it is said that the status is returned. As of now only one book is returned, so which is Vishal has. This is how the flow works for the regular person. Let's say for a software developer or someone who is learning MERN stack, how does this technically sounds? So let's say author is a single entity. So we have 3 entities. One is author, the second entity is book, and the third entity is member, and the fourth entity is borrowing. So we have 4 entities here. So author and book is one-to-many relationship. The reason is, if you fill authors, the book has a drop down which is auto populated. Similarly, add member is a single entity. It doesn't have any relation. It doesn't have any relationship. The other thing is the borrow. So issue book and return book are of same table. Let's say borrowing table, borrowing records. So this is many to many relationship. So you see, member and book are in many to many relationship with the borrowing. So in other word, you will have a book and borrowing records. These two have many-to-many relationship, and again we have member and book. Again, these two entities have many-to-many relationship. I think that is getting too complicated. Also, you can look at the summary. So far, we have 50 books, and total members of this library is just 5, and only one book is issued so far. So this is the dashboard statistics, which will create another endpoint. And we have 4 entity, as said, author, book, member, and issuer. So this is what it means. We have 4 entity: author, book, members, and borrowing. And I have made sure that what in this application, what all things we can do. Author, who can write books. So we have the list of author information, then book, and how many copies are available, and which book. Let's say Millionaire Next Door, we have 10 copies of it, and available copies is 10. We can manage this. And then member, who can borrow books. So we can also have the information about the member. And the next thing is books borrowed by member and return later. Who let's say Vishal has borrowed book and he wants to return it, so we can simply submit the. And if you want to delete this information, you can just click on this button, delete, and it will be deleted. Let's say I want to delete a book, so let me delete this total money makeover, and it's gone from the record. And if you want to delete any member, and this member is also gone. And if you see, we have total 4 member and we have 40 books as of now in the library. Talking about relationship, we have author and book, one-to-many relationship, member to borrowing, one-to-many relationship. And now let's talk about the code. We'll be creating this application completely from scratch. So you'll see, we'll create everything from scratch. We will be just having this public folder which has our HTML and CSS. Now as said, we have 4 entities, so we need 4 models for those entities, and we'll be following the MVC pattern. That's why we have used model, controller, and routes. We will definitely have an entry point. In case if you are interested in learning such project, I have a complete playlist for this. So this is a playlist. I'll leave this link in the description. We have about 9 videos, and this is work number 10 technically, and I'll be using AI suggestion to autocomplete this code. If you want everything from scratch, line by line, I would recommend you to start from 0, because in this episode number 1, 2, 3, I haven't used any AI. I'll be writing every line of code by hand, and I'll be explaining what it does, what each line does, what everything is. But and the topic of today is we have almost a video length of 2 hours. We have focused much on how to implement rather than what it is. Now if you want to know what every detail is about, I would recommend you to start from episode number 1. In case if you just interested in knowing how it's done, then you can watch directly to this video and start the work. I'll leave the description. I'll leave what source code in the description. It would be a GitHub link. If you want, you can just download it and start along with me. So far we have completed a simple API creation, CRUD operation without using AI, and the third one is we have seen one-to-many relationship, and the fourth step is we have seen many-to-many relationship, and the fifth step, which is today's lecture, we have used a 4 entity, and we have seen how to interlink them. Let's say if I modify the borrowing table, you will see the books table getting affected. That's the reason is if I insert some book from the issuer table, I want the book to be reduced from 10 to 9. So we have interlinked our collection. So that is the main topic of this video. And as you know that we are in episode number 10, and I'll be increasing the levels day by day on each video. As said, we have passed from simple API creation, CRUD operation, and then we have many-to-many relationship, one-to-many relationship, and finally we are here right now. These two table also, along with the interconnection between 2 collection, we have also made some technique to use these two form actually interacts with only one table, which is the borrowing table. So if you insert over this, you will find these data gets populated, and if you update it, you will find the data will not be created, but the data which is already added in this table would get modified. In this case, let's say we are taking Suresh, and we are giving him the book Psychology of Money, and the issue date is this time, which is today, and the return date or the due date is 1 week. If I click issue book, what will happen is your data got inserted. Suresh has bought Psychology, and this is his issue date, and this is his due date, and the status is not returned. So now with this form, we are not going to insert anything, we'll be just updating it. So that's the upgrade of the previous video. We were not got much exposure to how to manipulate one table with two forms, but here in this video we are focusing on it. Let's say Suresh, when I click Suresh, you'll see the data is getting auto populated. Suresh has bought which book. So if I click Vishal, you will find Vishal has got which book. Vishal has borrowed The Richest Man in Babylon. So this is also, we are going to see how to auto populate this. So instead of we manually searching who has bought which book, if I type the member, you'll find which Suresh has bought. Suresh has borrowed Psychology of Money book, and Vishal has borrowed Richest Man in Babylon book. So now based on that, we can say that Vishal has returned the book on 25th, and if you click return book, you'll see no data would be added. Instead, a table would be modified. Previously it was issued, now it says returned. So that is the main hero of this video. So we will be seeing dynamically populated. So you see added authors getting displayed over here, added members through this form getting displayed over here, added book through this field getting displayed over here, and based on the people who has bought, based on the member, you'll find the borrowed book getting automatically populated. This is one goal of this video. The second goal of this video is to form one table. If you add, you can add the record on this table through this form. You can update the record of this table through this form. That is goal number 2, and goal number 3 is interlinking. So if I issue a book, one book should get reduced from the total copies, available copies. That is the level, that is the difficulty number 3, which is what we are going to see in this video. So without wasting much time, I hope I have given enough intro for this particular project. Let's get into the video. Alright, now to start, I would recommend to have a folder anywhere as you wish. I'm choosing my folder on desktop, which is by the name book-borrow, and inside I have public folder where you will have your HTML and CSS. This is very basic setup. Now let's open a terminal, control backtick, and what we need is we need package.json. To have package.json, we need to write a code node init. Once you enter node init, you will find what we have to do is we have to get inside the direct folder, which is book-borrow. I was inside public_HTML, that's why it's not working. And also the code is npm init, not node init. Once you click actually we are inside public folder. Let's open our folder, and let's choose the direct folder for now. Here we have named it as book-borrow. Select folder, and now you see you have a direct file which is package.json, where you will see all your installed package. As of now we don't have any package, so you won't see anything. Now let's install some package. Npm I stands for install, and we need nodemon, we need Express, we need Mongoose, and we need .env file for the basic website. Once these packages are installed, what you will find is you will find a new key which is called dependency, and you will see the list of packages with its version number. As I said, this is the key called dependencies, and it's an object where you will find all the package name as key and the version number as the value. Now that is being set, the next thing what we need to do is we need to set the entry point. The entry point I'm going to keep it as server.js. This is the name that I'm giving. So we need an entry point. Let's create a new file and call it as server.js. This is where you all write your server configuration related code. And first of all, we need a package called Express so that we can create a server. And then we need to create an instance called app. Once it's done, then we, with the help of the instance, we will be calling a function called listen, and it will ask for two things. One is the port number, and the second one is the callback function. And this callback function will say your port is or server is running. So whichever this callback function will notify you saying that your server is running. To run this file, we'll be just writing node server.js. Once you click enter, you'll see in the error in the console you'll find server is running. So that is the very basic setup. Now you see the server is running. Now in case if you want to see the output in the browser, what you have to do is we need to create a basic route, app.get, and again it accepts two parameters. One is the URL which we are going to hit, and the second one is what response should you get. Now to see the changes, you have to close the server and type node server.js again. And if I hit localhost colon 3000, you should see hello world as a response. So this stands for the base URL. So the base URL of R is localhost colon 3000. And in case if you want to make something like API, and you need to see the changes, again you have to close the server and type node server.js. And if I change the endpoint to API, you'll see the same result. Now each time you make changes in your file, and if you want to see the response on the browser or the console, you have to close the server and come back again. So for that we have a package called NodeMon, where you just have to set up the command, which is I'm just typing a dev. So let me close this. If I type npm run, and after run if I type test, let's see what happens. If I type test, you'll see the code. This is the relevant command. When I type test, you see echo error, no test specified. So this is what is getting updated. So the same way, if I type npm run dev, so when I type run dev, in place of dev, this would get executed. So our package NodeMon is getting called when NodeMon gets called. So what is the purpose of having NodeMon? So if I press Ctrl S, if I make some changes on the browser and press Ctrl S, you'll see on the sidebar on each Ctrl S, which means save, on each saving of this document, while saving, you see this server is getting quit and comes back, restarts itself. So if I make hello world 2, previously to see the changes I just have to close the server by pressing Ctrl C and type node server.js. Now I'm not doing it, I'm just making the changes and pressing Ctrl S. Once I press Ctrl S, and if I get into the browser to see the changes, I just have to press Ctrl S and hit the URL. You'll see the changes getting reflected. That's the purpose of having NodeMon. That's enough for the interview. That's enough for the intro. Now the next thing what we are going to do is we have to organize this file. This file has to be organized in such a way so in the future we won't be getting confused. So here all the code related to ConnectDB comes, and so before that we will be having config related files, and then ConnectDB, and then we will have a middleware related code. And after middleware related code, what we will have is we will be having route related code, and after that we'll be having server related code. And since this is related to route, what we can do is we can simply put this in the route section. Now let's have little knowledge about env file. So I'm going to create a .env. and here I'm just going to define the port number. So here I'm hard coding the port number. So that is not how it works. I'll just type, or I'll get it from my previous work, because we will be setting two things. One is the port and the other one is the connection to the Mongo URL, which I'll explain you right now. But let's just understand how are we going to use this port variable in our file. To use that, we need a .env file. So that's why I have installed .env package at the end, at the beginning. And now once I have this .env gets initialized, now we need to set the configuration. So inside that we have a config function. We have to call that for config function with this instance, and once this is done, then we can directly call the process.env and .port. We can directly call this. Now you will not see any changes because everything is set. Now if you hit the endpoint, you will see no changes. So that means your .env is working. Your environment variable is set properly to 3000, and in case if you want to make this as 6000, and press yes, and to check the output we can directly call this. Have some space. We need to append that variable. So plus, and that's it. Now if I press Ctrl S, you'll see the port is now running. The server is now running on port 6000. In place of 3000, we just have to mention 6000, and it should work. Port 6000 is set for some other internal Windows function. Now I have set it to 8080. So now that works. Let's you can see localhost :8080. It works. The next thing is we need to set the database. Let's get into the MongoDB website. We just have to click on browse connection, browse collections. Once I click on cluster, you'll find browse collection. Now we are going to set the database as what name we can give. We can give it as bookdb. So this is a place where we need to set the database name. So let's create a new database, and one simple collection. Your database is done, and once your database is done, you need to get this URL. You need to set the username, you need to set the password. I'm showing the password here, but after this tutorial gets over, what I'll do is I'll just remove or rename this or reset it. So that's why we are protecting it with inside the .env file. I'm just showing you for the tutorial purpose, but you should not show the username and password and the database to anyone. So once that is set, your database is ready to go. You don't need this for now. Now let's create a function that will connect your database, that will connect your node application to the database. So for that we need a folder called config. So this is the reason for creating folder is to identify which file is located where. If I don't create folder, so it will be a random file. Once your application gets larger and larger, or your application might have hundreds or thousands of files, in that case it will be difficult to locate which file is where. So it's better to have this follow the folder structure which the professional developer usually do. Now let's create a new file and we'll call it as db.js. And here since we are going to connect our node application to the server, what we have to do is we need to get the connection. To get the connection, we need a package called Mongoose. And once Mongoose is set, we definitely need a .env, and we'll change that function config function, and then we'll be creating a function connectdb. Just make a note, whenever we are going to connect our node application with the database, the function should always be async. And then what we need is we need mongoose.connect. We don't have to make this big. I'm not using the try and catch block because I know this would work, but it's always recommended to use try and catch block. So once everything is done, you should see we'll just send console.response MongoDB connected. Now your connection is ready, but it will only work when you call your file. So our file is where located inside config, and inside config we have dv.js, and now the config related code. This is the function that we have created, but in Node.js or any in Node.js application, whenever we create an application, we need to export that application or else it won't work. Module.export. Now this variable which holds this connection to the database, we can call this, and once we use it over here, once we use the same variable over here, your database will be connected, and you should see code related to database connected. Let me just match the URL. Very rarely you will find an error saying that your current IP address not added. Just click the button, and once your IP address is added to this MongoDB, you should see no issue. So let's clear this. Quit the server by pressing Ctrl C and type clear npm run dev, and you should see your MongoDB is connected properly. So that was totally because our IP address was not recognized by the MongoDB. That's why it was not loading. So once your DB is set up, the next thing is to serve your public folders HTML. Now what we will do is we'll type send file, and we need to have a package called path, and inside path we will have a function called join. We are passing the absolute URL. So absolute URL is nothing but the location of your HTML file from the C drive. So C drive, inside C drive you will have user, inside user you will have my name Vishal, inside my name you will have your desktop, and inside desktop you will find this folder book-borrow. So this is the absolute URL. So there is two things, absolute URL and relative URL. So that's the whole different concept, but understand that this will give you the absolute URL, and we need to show where you're located, where your folder is located. My folder is located inside public. Now if I hit localhost colon 8080, let me just close this and make this 3000, because I used to have 3000 every time, so let's not break that flow. So if I hit localhost colon 3000, and you will see all the related HTML, but in the HTML it is also, we have linked the CSS, but the response is only HTML. Your node application does not know where are all the related files to this HTML is located. Now we need to say this to your node application with a middleware, and that middleware is called Express.static. Now to use middleware in the entry point file, what you have to do is you need to call a special function called use. So whenever you see app.use, that means you are going to use a middleware. So Express.static, and then we are just simply pointing to the public folder, and we are indirectly saying to the node application, whenever there is a request to this index.html file, what you have to do is look for all the supporting file inside public folder. That is what we are saying with the help of middleware. The concept of middleware is very clear and straightforward. I'm not getting into deep because this tutorial will go will have a very long duration if I start to explain every single thing. But let me just focus on the usable, how to use the function, instead of getting into the theory part why we use it. I'll just explain you how to use it. So in case if you want to know how to use it, we have a playlist already in this this is actually a playlist. This is episode number 9, and if you see episode number 1, 2, 3, I have covered all the theory and why do we use this. So I'm not getting into that because we have a very limited time to complete this project. So this is set. I'll just explain you how to integrate it. Now we have integrated our middleware so that the node application know where to go if they have a single request and that response index.html. Cool. Once this is set, your HTML is good to go. Now when I hit localhost 3000, you are directly getting the HTML file with the CSS. Now that is set. Without wasting time, let's just directly jump into creating the modules. Let's first focus on author module. Now to create a module, we need a folder called routes, and inside routes, let's create a new file and call it as author routes.js. And inside this author routes would require a new folder, a new we are going to follow MVC pattern, so we need controller, and inside controller we need author controller.js, and here in the server.js we need to set the route. That means whenever, so before that, let me just call the route here, author routes. So whenever, so it's not actually routes, it's going to be a middleware, app.use. Whenever there is a request for author, what I'm saying is look for the author routes file. So in the author routes file, we need to set the router. So let's call the Express, because it's where the router it has the router. So const router, and this router will have a get request, and don't forget we need to export that router. That's only when you will be using this author routes, or else it won't work. Now we won't be directly sending the request from the response from the route itself. We would be calling the author controller, which is inside controller folder. So this request is sent to the file called author controller, where we need to explicitly send the response. So let's say response dot send, we will say get all authors. So what it usually means is, make sure you are saving this. So if I hit authors, and what should happen is, so if I type authors, make sure you have the same spelling as here I've listed on the middleware. If I click enter, you'll see the request from the server.js, from your entry point, it would be sent to the routes based on this variable, and your routes again checks whether it's the get operation, post operation, put operation, or delete operation. Based on that operation, the relevant file from the controller is called, and from the controller you are displaying this output. So that's it. Now what we need to do is, we need to create a model where we need to define our schema. So here what we will do is, we will call it as author model.js, and inside, so we will simply set, we will call the Mongoose, and you will set the schema, what all fields that we need name, we need email, we need country. We have name, we have email, and we have country. So the type is string. We don't have these, we don't need the string and unique and all for now, for the understanding purpose. Now we have our fields are set. We have name, we have email, and we have country. We don't need timestamp. And once this is set, we need to link our collection with our schema. So this is the collection name, and this is a schema. Now what is the first thing that we need to do? We need to set up this form to send the response to the server. So let's do that. we have this form, and it has the ID or form author. So let's create a new JS so that we can link it at the bottom. We will call it as script colon src script.js, and let's create a new file and we'll call it as script.js. And in this script we need to call all the we have const, so we need to get the input field of what is the name we would be differentiating with the ID author name input. The same way we have sorry, author email, just cross checking, and then we have author country. Now when I click submit on this form, we need to add an event listener. Add event listener, submit. By default the page would get load. I don't want the page to load, so it prevent default. And let's create a object where you will store all your input field value, and we can send this. Let's create an endpoint. And we have to set it this way. So this is our endpoint. So to send our form data to the server, we need to use a fetch. And in the fetch, we need to set some values. I'll just complete the code and explain you. So what data are we sending? So we are sending the data to the endpoint, to this endpoint, and the method is post. And what type of data? The type of data is JSON data that we are sending. Since our object, this is an object, we need to convert this into JSON so that the server can understand it. That's why we are setting. We are not sending JavaScript object, we are sending JSON object. So to convert this JavaScript object into JSON, we will be using JSON.stringify. Now we are sending the form data, so we need to accept it. So in the server, it looks for the route which you set it at the endpoint in the JavaScript. So this is the route. It would check the relevant operation. We are going to use post operation. You can see in the JS we have set the method as post, so it would relevantly find. So let's create author, and in this the request is again sent to the controller. Now we need to call the model, and with this, first we need to make sure we are getting the form data. Let me just show you how the data is sent before. So the author is Vishal, and the email ID is, and the country is India. In the network, if I reset everything and click on add author, you see a request is sent, and what all request is sent: country, email, and name. So we can access these: name, email, and country. And once you have access to it, you need to create a new author, and we need to pass the variable or pass the object which we have received as a parameter or as an argument. And with this new author variable you have created, you need to just save it, and this has to be await. And we need to send the response saying that author successfully created. And once you have sent this response, you need to access it from the script tag. So first of all, the request, let me just close all the unwanted file so we don't get confused. Now from the controller we are passing them as JSON. Now your JavaScript doesn't understand JSON, so it need to be converted. So let's convert it. You can simply say response return. We are converting it into JSON, and after it is getting converted into JSON, you can directly access them as a JavaScript object. So we have set it as key message, and you will see message saved successfully. Or so you can see this is the key. We can access it data.key, because now we are sending as JSON so that your server can send the data to the client. In this case your browser. The server sends the data to your browser in the form of JSON data. Now we need to convert the JSON data into JavaScript object. That's what this then does. First it converts your JSON into JavaScript object, and then you can access the JavaScript object through this variable data and use it wherever you want. For simplicity, I'm just using the alert saying that this message got saved successfully. If I refresh it, if everything goes well, if I send the same data, add author, we get an error. Let's see what. And in the response you will find cannot read properties of undefined. So that means you have sent country, email, name, country in the console. Before, let's just check the model as well. Country, email, name, these are set, right? Sorry, country, email, name, it says undefined name, so there is some problem with the name attribute. So in the JavaScript, it's because we need to set a middleware app.useJSON. So it's a long theory. Let me just simplify it for you. When you send the data from browser to server, it needs to convert it to JSON, and then server, and again server sends the JSON, and your browser receives it. Here you are using the function called stringify to convert your JSON. You convert your JavaScript object into JSON, and here you will be using parse. Now you might have seen we ourselves using in this code JSON.stringify, but we never used JSON.parse. It is because this middleware will take care of it. That's a short summary. Let's try sending it again. Clear all request. Yes, you see we have sent these form data as a response. We got the message, and if you notice, you would have seen the pop-up as well. Now the thing is, we have to, the first module is done. The second module is to add the books. The same way we would be using, we need to create routes, we need to create controller, we need to create model. So let's create routes first. We'll call it as book routes.js. Similarly, we need controller. We'll call it as book controller.js. Then what we need model. We will call it as book model.js. So once these are set, we need to create a model. Let's do that. So before that, you need to understand what are the data that we are storing. We are storing books, we are storing the authors which we have created, and then we are storing the total number of available copies. So we need 3 fields in the model. We don't need these authors for now. Let's close all the author related files. So here in the schema, we will be storing title, which is book title, and then we will be storing the author ID. So this author ID is related to the author model. That's why I'm saying author model. And then we'll be storing total copies and we'll be storing available copies. We don't need this timestamp for now. Cool. Once your model is set, the next thing what you have to do is you need to call your routes, and we'll call it as book routes. And as said, we set the middleware. If there is a request for books, make sure this is properly gets called. And the same way, we need to set the get request and post request, and we need to change the controller here, and the book controller will take care of it. Get all books, and here we'll be having create book. So before that, before saving this, we need one thing, which is we need to populate this author. So to populate this, again we need to send a request. So we'll call a function const set author drop down, and make sure what is actually the drop down. We have given the ID to the drop down. Select the ID, so it's book author. Get the element by ID. We will have this all the initialization at the top, and we need to send the get request fetch so where we are going to send. So let's send the fetch request to whom. We'll send the fetch request to the little confusion. Where is our JS? In the book routes, sorry, in the author routes. Where is author routes? We need to say there would be some request for author or just names. Author name. So if that is the case, then who is going to respond? Who is the responsible for displaying or for fetching the author from the model? It is this function, get author names. And let's first of all we need to send the request to this URL endpoint backtick / author names. And once you send the request, we need to get the response. First of all, let's just display them in the console itself. Now we are sending the fetch request. So on page load, we need to send the fetch request. Once the fetch request is sent, the author will send it to this controller, which is author controller, and exports dot. We need to talk to the model, and we'll be sending the response in the form of JSON. So author is a model name. You see we have already added it, called it over here. Author is a model name, and we are using the find function. We need only the names, and on page load, if everything goes well, you should see the request. I think there is an error. Okay, we have set this halfway and we have left it. That's why it's showing error. Author is set the same way. Let's just hide this to function for now so that we get out of this error. Now on page refresh, you should see author names, the request is sent, and we got the response. Now what we need to do is we need to populate it in the drop down. We got the response, and now we need to get this HTML, and before sending the response we have to set it blank, and after getting response it is going to be a multiple value. So here in this case we will be using for each. So we can directly use, select this, get the option tag, edit as HTML, copy this and paste it over here. So we need to do one thing, which is author. We need to populate it. So this, we need to populate the drop down with this option tag. We will be passing ID, since you know in the response you got ID and you got the name. We are passing the ID as a value because when storing the book information, you have seen in the model we are storing the author ID, not the author name. That's why in the option tag we are populating the ID. So once that is set, if I refresh the page, you will see the fetch request and only Vishal is there, so that's why. So another author, will name it as UI Monk, and again India, click on add author, everything should go fine. And now you see after saving, these data still persists. Now to clear it, you need to call this, and once it gets displayed, once the message gets displayed in the alert, I'm resetting the form. So if I hard refresh it, Control Shift R, you'll see 2 authors, and if you want one more author you can also do that. You'll find 3 authors. Now it's time for the next module, which is books. Let's close the author related work, and when there's a get request, who is going to take care of it? In the book controller, exports dot and here you will see we'll simply just send a response.send to get all books. Cool. Now the same way how we have done here, we need to do for the books. We need to get the form first. We need to create the object. So the form is what? The form is the book form. Let's call it, and let's call all the related input field. We have book title input, then we have to save time I have called all the input field. Now quickly we need to set the endpoint. It's books. Now this time it's books and we can name it as book endpoint. So this is the form. When I click on submit, so add event listener, we need to stop the page from getting loaded. Then we need to create the form data and what all information that we need to save. So we need the title, we need the author ID. I hope it's getting properly fetched. Yeah. And then we have the total copies, then we have available copies. Available copies and total copies are same at first.
And then if everything is set, we need to send the fetch request to the book endpoint, and we'll be sending the JSON, we'll be sending them into we'll be sending them as form, and once we receive the data, we'll be converting it into JSON, and after converting it into JSON, we are simply displaying the message saved successfully. So if everything is set as we thought, we should not see any, we should just see the message saying that book saved successfully, or else you'll see an error. I just want you to note one thing: we are sending the data in the form of body, not as parameter, because here we'll be seeing how to we'll be using the functionality of delete. So for that, you need to know what is parameter, request parameter, and what is body parameter. We are sending the data, the form data, in the form of JavaScript object through a body parameter. That's enough. Now we need to quickly get into the controller, and let's just see first whether we are able to send the request or not, and make sure you have a proper post route set, and it's create route and exports.create route response.send create a book. Now if I type something, 48 loss of power, author is the copy available is 5, and click on add book, you should see a request is sent, author ID, the available books, title, and total copies, and the response that we are getting is create a book. So this is the response this is the place from where we are getting the response. Now we need to store them. To store them, first we need to call const book model, and we need to get get all the form data. First, const form data, we need to set the object, we are getting title, author ID, total copies, available copies, and then we need to create the instance of model, new book equal to new instance, and after once we get the new book, and we will be using the save function, and since it's a database operation, we need to make it await, and we need to send the response.send, and we are sending the message as we have mentioned on the script tag. We are sending the key message, and the value is book created successfully. Now let's create a new book, and I have got some book names. So this is book number 1. Who is the author? Napoleon Hill is the author, and we have 5 copies of it. And if I click on add book, you see that message book created successfully. That means we are able to send the request properly, we are able to receive the message saying book created successfully. And now the next thing is we need to display the created books over here. So to do that, we already have, we'll create a new get all books the function. We need to define them, const get all books, and also once the data is saved properly, we need to reset the form. Not here, I'm sorry, we are in the wrong file. We have to be in this script, and your form is reset at school. The next thing is get all books, and also once you create a book, this function should get called, and this function will simply populate this table. Now to do this, what is the first thing? We need to have the table. So let's have the table. So this is the book. So this is the book table. Let's identify them with ID. book table. Cool, that is set. The next thing is we need to send the fetch request to the book endpoint. Just understand. I hope the syntax is correct. Let's just redo it again. So we're sending the fetch request to whom? The book endpoint, and then we will be getting the response. We will be converting it into JSON. Sorry, we will be converting it into JavaScript object, and then we'll be getting all the values. So we'll just we'll display them in the console first for now. So we need to send a request is sent on page load, right? So let me just refresh it and check the console. And in the console I don't see anything, so we have to call this. So on page load we are sending the function called books, and this book is already getting the response called get all books. It's because we have already populated it. Now we'll simply make this a book, and with this we'll be using find and const all books, and if I send you response dot send, let's see what results that we get. In the books we have one book for now, so let me just add one more book, and this is Richest Man in Babylon. This is another book. The author is George S. Clason, and we have 10 copies of it. Click on add book, and now once you have added it, if I refresh it again, in the books you should see we have only one book. Actually there should be two books. Let's add one more thing. I don't know why it's not getting saved. Let's try adding this. George S. Clason, 10 copies of it. Click on add book. Okay, we are getting the error. Book.save is not a function. I hope book says book.save is not a function. So this is causing an issue. We have already called book model. Book model is right. Oh, it should work. Let's just see again. Okay, we should not use this. We have to use this instance. Now it would work. Now I want to show two values. That's why I'm adding two books. Click on add book. If I refresh, you should see two books that we have added. We got it. Now you can see it in the console as well, because we have used console. Now in the response, I want you to notice one thing. In the response, this is actually the response that we have received, but we are just receiving the author name in the form of ID, but we don't want that author name to be ID. Instead, I want the author name should be the actual author name that we have mentioned over here. I hope I'm making it clear. In the response, we are just getting the value like the author is some random number. Instead of showing the primary key or the foreign key, I want the relevant name to be displayed. In that case, what we will do is we will use a new function, and that function is called populate. Where is the controller? Dot populate, and wherever there is author ID, just replace it with name. That's what I'm saying. Now this is enough to see your author is now Napoleon Hill. I hope I have made it clear. Previously it was the primary key of the author. Now the primary key is getting replaced with the name. Now we need to fetch. in the script tag, it's a for each, right? Now we need to get the table. I hope where the table is. We might have initialized it over here. Yes, we need to get this, or we will get the t body of it. T body. Get this t body, and we need to first clear it before sending the request. And once the request is sent, we need to use the for each datas.for each. Now with this t body, we'll be using backtick. Don't forget concatenate, and get one t row. Edit as HTML, copy the whole thing, and paste it. We can have it as ID dollar. Wherever there is a value, you just need to change it to this query literal. Also, we will be having ID. Cool. Now it's time to. We don't need these value. In the console, so we have ID underscore ID. Get the underscore ID. Data dot underscore ID. The same ID that we have to pass it to the button as well. And then this is name. So it's just a title. Sorry, we need title of the book. Then what is the second? Then we have author. For author, we need data dot then dot name. And then we have copies, total copies, which is data dot total copies. And then we have available copies. If I make a refresh, there is an error, dot inner HTML. I hope we have got this. Okay, we need to make this query selector, and with this ID. Yes, we have two books that is being populated over here. And if you add one more book, let me add one more book. For that, before I need to create the author. Click on add author, and now you should see the author is added. Now let's add the other book. The author is Stanley. We have 10 copies. Click on add book, and now you should see the third value, Millionaire Next Door, written by Thomas. Total available copies are 10. Total copies is 10, and available copies are 10. Now, if I want to delete one of those, I need to send the endpoint. Sorry, I need to send the request again. So before that, what we will do is we'll create a on-click function, and that on-click will have delete a book, and we need to define this. This time, this on-click button has the ID of the book that we want to delete. Now we would be sending the ID, because with this ID we will be able to delete the whole book. So with this ID, what we need to do is we need to send the fetch request, and that request is actually dot then again we should simply say message book deleted successfully and all. Cool. Into the book endpoint, we were sending as body. Now we are sending it as parameter. That's the difference that I wanted to show. Now immediately when I click on the delete button, an ID would get appended on the URL. You won't see it, but an ID would be appended once the book route get that ID, and we need to say you would be expecting ID delete book. Now this function in the book controller exports.delete, and we are saying you need to expect an ID from the parameter, not from the body, and delete it. And once it is deleted, send the message book deleted successfully. Now if I click on delete, you should see that book got deleted. If I click delete again, based on the ID passed, that book would get deleted. If I delete this, and this is also gone. So now we have no book. So let me add one book and show you. Think and Grow Rich. This is written by Napoleon Hill, and we have 10 copies of it. Click on add book. Once you add book, add a new book, you see the book got added. Now it's time to create the member module. Let's do that. So now let's start creating the member module. So to create member module, again we need a route, and we'll call it as member routes.js. Then we need a controller, then we need model, let's define what are the fields. We need name, email, phone, and address, which is very straightforward. We have name, we have email, we have phone, and we have address. Once this is set, we need to say to the server, whenever people look for members, look for this routes, which is member routes, and just as we have for books, we'll just make this. But here in this case, it should be a member controller who would be taking care of get all members. And here in this members, in the member controller, we need to define this const export we need to simply send the response get all members. Cool. That's enough for the basic. So if I hit localhost colon 3000 / members, I should see from the controller. Let me remove all the book related so we don't get confused. So here, when there is an entry point, the entry point will check for members, and it will pass the request to the routes, and routes will check what kind of request is this, what kind of method it is. If it is get, who is going to take care of it? In the controller we have get all members, and get all members simply send the output saying get all members. That means this is working fine. Now let's create the object of these input field. For that we need to first display all the field on the JavaScript. Let me just do this. Now I have added all the input field and also added the form. So let's call this form. Let's create a differentiation. So this is for members. We'll add an event listener when there is a submit. When a submit button is clicked, I don't want the page to get reloaded, and then I need to get the form data object, and I need to store all the input field value and this would be in the form of form data, and then we need to create the endpoint. We'll set the endpoint to member endpoint. So this is members. We need to send the request, post request to whom? Post request to the member endpoint, and the method is post, and we are sending the JSON data, and we need to convert the JavaScript object into JSON data using JSON.stringify, and then sorry. And if we need, again, we will be getting the response as a JSON. We need to convert it into our JavaScript object. Once we convert it, we need to get the response. Usually it would be a success message, and then we need to reset the form, which we have already done thrice. I'm not going to repeat it again to save some time. I'm just leaving it to you. And we are sending the post request, so there should be a post route which would be taking care of it. So create member, and here in the create member, exports dot create member, now we need to call the model. So here, what model that we have? Member model. First we need to get the form data. We will be getting it from the body. So let's see first whether we are able to send those form data properly in the network tab. So this is the member of the library. We can have this. I'm sorry. Click on add a member. Oh, you see the page got reloaded. That means your form is not properly set. This is a member form in the HTML. Yeah. Cool. Let's fill all our values. Cool. So I click on add member. We see in the payload we are passing these information. Let's capture this in the controller. We need address, email, name, then we need phone, and then we need to create the instance of model new member equal to, and then we need to use a save function, and this has to be await or else it won't work, and then we need to send the response member created successfully. Refresh it. I know this would work. Let's add a new member and click on add a member. You see the response that we have received is message created successfully. Now we need to populate this in the member table, which is similar that what we have done earlier. So we need to send a request again, so that will get all the members written. Get all members. We need to send the fetch request without any data, and we need to return it with JSON, and then we would be getting a list of data, and we'll just simply it in console log. And in the member controller, we have already defined the get method. Now it's just time to use the member model and store it into a variable, all members dot. We need to send the response dot send all members. This await can be over here. Now on page load, if I defined it, I'll define this on page load. Refresh it again. You should see members. All await member. I think they have missed a space. Await. And now you should see members, and we have only one member, so that's all right, totally all right. Now we need to get the HTML where we would be displaying our rows, just as we have done for the members, sorry, books. We're going to do the same. Get this tbody id in the so this is id, tbody is ready. When there is a fetch request for all members, I just want to make this inner HTML as nothing, and then we would be getting data in a nested object to solve that. I hope we have id, cool, then we have name, then we have email, then we have phone. We don't think we have not displayed the address, cool, you can remove the address if we don't need. And then we have a button. After phone we have button, and we'll remove the unnecessary code. We definitely need id, and we'll pass the id value, and it should be an on click. We'll call a function, or create a function, delete member, cool. Now if I hard refresh it, you should see in the member we have only one member, and if I hover on the button, you should see now we need to define the delete member. We will be passing the parameter id, then we need to fetch a response in JSON, and then we'll be simply saying message deleted successfully, and display all member again. Now we need to mention it in the route. There would be a delete request, and it would have id in the parameter, and delete member is a function that is going to take care of the delete operation. Exports delete member, and then if everything goes smooth, you should see there is an error, invalid argument. In the script we're passing the endpoint. Make sure you are sending it as a string. This is a mistake which we often do. We have to pass it as a string. Now refresh it, click on delete, and member deleted successfully, and that's gone. Now if you want, you can try adding multiple members. Let me just take this there. Let's add Vishal, a new member. After creating, we need to call this, cool, and let me add one more member, add member. There seems to be an error. Maybe in the member model, I have made it unique. Email is unique, that's why it's not getting saved. So we have to make this email and phone different. And now we have two members. Oh, we don't need Vishal again. We want it to be UI Monk. Some random value. Click on add member, and you have two members now. Now it's time to create module for issue book. So for the issue book model, so we'll create a new model called borrower. A new module called borrow. So here what we will do is, and here these both form going to share only one model. So create a new routes, and we'll call it as borrowing routes.js. Then we need controller. We'll call it as borrowing controller.js. Again we have model, we'll call it as borrowing model.js. And over here we'll just say we need a member ID. We will be storing the foreign key. Again, the book is again the foreign key. Whatever member, whatever book you have added, it would be populated over here. Then we have issue date, then we have due date, and for this form we will be using return date. And if it is returned, then it would be we'll just name it as issued and returned. If you submit this form, then by default issued would be there, and then in that place of issued you will see returned. And we don't need timestamp for now. Cool. And the next thing is we need to populate these two drop down. So let's do that. Let's remove the old we need only. So now populate drop down, populate issue book form, issue book drop down. So again we need to send the fetch request. We'll send the fetch request to whom? We'll send the fetch request to issue borrowing itself, borrowing endpoint, BORRO borrowings, and it's going to be borrowing endpoint. Now in the routes we'll just use what we have in the other. We'll simply be using borrowing controller. Borrowing controller, we would be sending two get request, and the first request would be get all members. The second request would be get all books. The relevant function would be taking care of this request, and make sure you have properly initialized the route. So when there is a request for borrowings, make sure you have already used or properly used the endpoint name properly, borrowings, and the flow will be on this way. And in the controller we need two models. First one is members, the second one is book, and the third one we need function get all members. Let's just match the function name properly. Then we will be calling member once we send the member, we will be sending all the members, and const all members, send the response. The same way we need to send all the books. Make sure the function what you have mentioned here is exactly same as this. Book all books. It doesn't matter if you write it over here or over here, but await is needed since we have made this async. Now we need to send the request. Using fetch API. We would be displaying it in the form of console first. Definitely you will be getting multiple data. Console The same way, we need to send another fetch request, and this is for what? And this is for all books. So on page load, I want these two drop down gets populated. I think there is an error. So you'll just see it in the console because we have used console. So you see, we have these values. So now we need to get these two drop downs. The member, issue member, and I hope the other one is issue book. Cool. Over here we need to get that variable, and by default we have to make these two inner HTML as blank. So once we make this blank, what is the next thing? We need to populate them. So it's a for each, data.for each, and then we need to populate the member dropdown, which we have already seen for the author. In this case, it's going to be issue book, and you see the member name is getting populated properly, but get all books, I think get all books is not getting populated. Get all books in the controller, all member, get all books. So let's check the endpoint also. In the console, all member, all books. Yeah, we have the list of books, but data.for each name, actually it's not name, it's title. That's the reason. So you see the members whom to issue and what book to issue. So that is getting populated. Now it's a CRUD operation again for sending these value to the borrowing table. So let's do that. Get this form. This form is called issue book form. And when someone submits from this issue book form, issue book form dot add event listener, we need to e.prevent default, then send the form data. Also, I'll just use these input field value. So these are the input field. We'll be getting the issue, the member, the book, and then we'll be getting the date from this input field, and then we'll be getting the the due date from this input field, which I'll be setting. We don't need this. Let's just make sure that our model, which is this, has the same key that we are mentioning here. And then we have issue date, and the due date, and by default let's just make this dash. status default is issued. Cool. That's enough. Now what we need to do, we need to send to the database using method post, the header, what type of data, and what data are we sending. And once we send those data, we need to convert them into object, and then we need to display them in the alert. If everything is set, we need to create a post route which would be taking care of create borrowing, and in the controller we'll be getting all the data. And then member ID, book ID, issue date, due date, these are the data that we will be receiving from the browser. And then we need to call the borrowing model. We need to create an instance of model, new, and then we'll be storing it, send the response. If everything goes right, you should see the success message. The guy named UI Monk has borrowed richest man in Babylon, and he has borrowed today, and the due date is 3 days from now. 3 days from today, and click on issue book, and there is an error. Borrowing validation cast to date field to a value. Let's see what. I think we have made this. We are sending it as string, but the value is stored as date. It says a casting issue, and the casting issue is based on because of this. Let's try saving it again. A guy named UI Monk purchased richest man in Babylon. When the book is issued on 23rd, and the deadline is 3 days from now. If I click on issue book, you see that it is getting saved properly. So here you see we are sending these information, and we are getting this as a response. Now we need to fill those table as we did. So get all borrowings, get all. So it's again a get request, which we already done, which I have done this many times in this tutorial itself. Fetch and in the controller, where is the get request? Get all borrowings, and in the controller exports what we will do is I'll just show you without the populate. So on page load, you should see get all borrowings, because get all borrowings has to be a function again. So get all borrowings, all. As of now, we just have only one borrowings. We see member ID and book ID is not converted into member name and book name. So to do that, we need to use populate in the controller. Now if I do the same thing again, and if I click on borrowings, you see the member is now converted into member name. The book ID is now converted into title. So that is cool. Now we need to simply populate it. To populate it, we need to have this table row. let's call this table data, borrowing table body, and when the page loads, I want the to be none, and then using for each, datas.for each, previously there was a class, so everything is properly converted. You see 23, if I zoom in a bit, so the name, the guy UI Wonk, which is coming from here, the title, which is coming from this field, and the date we are converting back into date again from string to. So what it says is usually the date is stored in this way. Now to see it from the human readable format, JavaScript uses the date function and convert it into a string, and it's getting displayed properly. Let's see what if this is not displayed, how does it would look like. And cool, you see it's not readable format at all. It's not readable, so that's why date function is getting converted. Now again we are checking if it is issued, then issued. If it is not issued, if it is, so there are two things. One is which is actually stored. As of now we don't have anything, so that's why this function, this line is getting executed. If the return date is set, then the return date would be mentioned. And then the status. By default we have made this as issued. If we update this through this form, then we need to set these two values. We need to set the return date first, and then we need to set the status from issued to returned. That's it. So to set the classes, CSS class, what I did is, if the status is issued, then display this HTML. If the status is not issued, so remember in the model we have made, there are only two possibilities, issued and return. If the status is issued, then use this. If the status is not issued, then it's definitely going to be returned. So in that case, use this class. So here you will find not returned, that's one thing. The second thing is issued with the CSS class. Let's try adding, Ramesh has taken a book called Millionaire Next Door, and he has taken today, and the return date is again 3 days from now. Click on issue book, and now Ramesh has the book Millionaire Next Door. Now there are two things. One is, if I make the Millionaire Next Door, if I issued Millionaire Next Door, then here the available copies should be -1. If it is 10, it should be -1, which is 9. Let's do that. Now here we have a book ID. Now we need to call the model which is already there. What we need to do is, we need the book dot find, and here we need to pass the book ID, and if there is a book ID, then what we need to do, we need to get the available copies in the book model. Where is the book model? Available copies. You have to make the available copies. Book.available copies. What we need to do? We need to make this -1. Over here it has to be await. current book dot available copies minus equal to 1, and then we have to save this. And once it is saved, we need to, after creating, so this is after creating, we need to get the books, get all books, I guess. If I refresh it, I think we have to delete this. So let me delete it through MongoDB because we haven't created delete function here. So we have bookDB. Inside bookDB we have borrowings, and then there are already 2 values that we have entered. Let us delete those. Now there would be no data. Vishal, the guy named Vishal, has taken the Rich Think and Grow Rich, taken on 21st, and he would be giving why 25th. Let's see, Rich and the available copy is 10. If I issue a book, it should be I think there is an error in the console. Cool. The server responded with the 500 in the network. If I click issue book is not defined. Maybe it's from the controller. Book, yes, it's not. It's actually this variable. You can see capital V. Let's try again. Some random value. Issued on 26th. Issue book. Again, there is an error. Find must be an object. And yes, now it's getting decremented. That works. So again, another guy called Ramesh has taken the same book, Think and Grow Rich, today. The same deadline. Book. And now instead of 9, it should be 8. Now first thing first, this has to be populated based on this table, borrowing table, and we can filter it by if it is issued, then only display it in the member. So to do that, what we need to do is, let's load a fetch request, load issued member names, and this should be on page load, and an endpoint should be sent. So here fetch dot then, so here we are sending plus backtick slash borrowing endpoint, then issued member. We are sending the request to them. So here in the routes, issued member, get issued member, and in the controller, exports issued member. Over here, what we need right now is, we need the people, we need the names. So for that we need which model, borrow model. we have to find with the status. If the status is issued, then convert the member ID and the book ID and send them back. So now if I refresh and check in the network tab, issued member, so we just need a name, so we don't need a book. So let me remove this. Issued member, So how are we going to fetch it from the, so it's going to be data.for each. Simply we'll just try it with console log. So we need member id. Inside member id we have name, member id dot name. Now we have this. Since it is already set, what we can do is, let's get this id. So document dot query selector return member dot inner html is not inner html. I think that's fine. And then we have to append it if it is set. It's plus equal to, and get this value, edit as html, and pass this. We need name dollar. In the console it would be written from, not in the console, it's in the network tab. Data dot member id dot name. This is for the name, and to identify the id we have to pass the, let's see, Vishal and Ramesh is now available. That is step number 1. Step number 2 is, if I select this, if I select name, I want the borrowed book to be automatically displayed over here. So to do that, we need a on change. So what we do is, we will add an on change event listener dot add event listener. What it should do, it should again send the fetch request. Now in this fetch request, one small correction is, it should be not the borrowing id, because we need to pass the member id, not the borrowing id. Member id has this id. That is what we need to match. Where is it? Over here. Dot underscore id. Let's check whether it's getting properly populated. In the option tag, yeah, the value is done. Okay, now let's focus on this. Now over here, what we need to send is, we need to send the member id. So to get the member id, we need to first be able to select the value. So let's see first whether we are able to select the value, and then we will send to the through the fetch array. So alert member id. So if I select the member, I should get the alert. It says undefined. So I believe we are on the right input field. Select this, return member, yes. Okay, simple thing is, instead of using this dot value, we can use e dot target dot value. We are able to get the fetch, get the member id. Now with this member id, we need to query the you'll see books. So this is the URL. So console.log data, that's fine for now. What we will do is, we need to set this endpoint on the routes. Get books issued to member. Now exports dot. Now we would be finding with the help of two things. One is the member id and the status is issued. Then get those values. So in the console, if I select Ramesh, it's giving me nothing. Let's see why. Okay, instead it's params, and we need to set the member id. We will be passing the member id to them, colon books. In the script, make sure you're passing the member id properly. This is not a standard string, it's a variable, JavaScript variable. So this is how you need to send. Cool. Let's try again. The books borrowed by Ramesh is what? Is Think and Grow Rich. Cool. Now once we have this, so book id dot title. This is how we need to get this. Datas. What we do is we need to populate it. So let's populate it. On change, we need to get this input field and make this blank. Borrowed book. And after this, you need to simply populate them with the name. So how are we having it? So we have book id, and then this book id has what? Title. Let me just cross check, and instead of passing we'll pass the author id. If I refresh it, and if I select Ramesh, okay, there is something. Data is not defined, it says. So it's a for each, and we have not used the for each yet. So datas dot select Ramesh, and yes, it's Think and Grow Rich. If Vishal is there, it's not. Again, Vishal also borrowed Think and Grow Rich. Yes, Vishal also borrowed Think and Grow Rich. So let's try adding one more user, and let's call Suresh and issue millionaire next door, and set the start date, issue date, and when he would be returning it, 26th. Click on issue book. So now here the count got decremented to 9, and let's select. Now over here, Suresh also, when I submit, I want these to get populated. So where are these two getting populated? Let me just check. We definitely have two endpoints. Yes, populate drop down, and this should be on when the book is issued. So let's add this over here. Now Suresh has what? Suresh has come to return millionaire next door, and we have to set the issue date. Now let's work on this form. Here what we would do is, let's just keep this what we have received on the network. Let's see. Let me just show you what we need to know is, if I select Ramesh, we have got this. Instead of storing the value author ID, what we do is we will simply store the ID of whom? ID of the actual borrowing table, the primary key of the borrowing table, not the foreign key of the book. Now, once I click on submit, it will be easy for me to, once I click on return, it will be easy for me to select which row to pick, and based on that I'll update the values. So let's do that. Now we have to pick this form. Oh, sorry. Return book dot add event listener. Make sure not the page to load. For that I'll doing this. So let me just pick the return member. Yes. Then we have book ID, borrowed ID. Yes. Then we have return date. Yes, return date. Now here the book ID is not actually the book ID, it's the booking ID, borrowed ID. VORROW, borrowed ID. And we just need to send these two values. We don't need member. And we need to send the request, the put request. So fetch we need to pass the borrowed ID and we need to make this a fetch request of method put. Method put content type is of course JSON. We are converting it into object to JSON, and then dot then convert it back. So we are sending the put request with the form data, and we need to set the put request of course, and we would be expecting borrowed ID. So it's not actually books, it should be you can write simply like this. And now in the controller, make sure to change update borrowing, that's fine. Exports update borrowing. First we are getting the borrowed ID and we are finding it and updating the status to returned. So here updating the status to returned, and then we need to fetch body dot what are we sending along the body. We are sending return date and in place of JavaScript date we need to pass this value. Return date input, I'll make this return date input. Once these two are set, we need to send the response book returned successfully, and along with that there are some values that has to be updated. Let's see what are those. So in the borrowing model, what all data are getting saved? Return date and status. In place of return date you will find the date and the status would be updated or returned. So in the controller we are updating the status as returned, that's cool. The second is we are updating the date. Let's try sending those value again. So a guy has come and he's come to, I think there is an error, that's why it's not showing up. Let's select Ramesh. Ramesh has come to return the Think and Grow Rich, and he has come to deliver today. And if I click on update, you'll see Ramesh data. Let's see what happened over here. Update. There's an error in the console. Borrow ID is not defined. This is not defined, it says. In the script tag, borrowed book dot value. So this is one. Borrowed book. This is borrowed book. So we can rename this borrowed ID with this one. Maybe it's not able to fetch this value. That's why it's not getting updated. Let's try again. Console clear all, network clear all. Ramesh, select the guy Ramesh has come to return the book, and the date is 25. Click on return book. There is an error. Uncaught borrower ID is not defined again. My bad. Select return book. Okay. Yes, you see that it got updated. Cool, that means it's working. Also, when updating, I want that since we have updated rich think and grow rich, we want these books also to get updated. So it's really straightforward as we have done earlier. In the borrowing controller, we have to get these again, and also we need to send the book ID also. Oh my god, there seems to be an interesting twist here, because we have to send a book ID, because we are not sending book ID. Instead, we are sending in the value of book ID, we are sending what? We are sending the actual ID. That should not be the case. I think we have to rewrite this. Cool, that's okay. What we do is, instead of book ID, we'll pass the book ID itself. Let me just redo it again. Let's just go 2 steps back, and when there is a change, I want, let's just display all console.log datas. Okay, so when I select a name, you should see those data should get populated. And here we were using the actual ID, but we don't want to use the ID. We want the author ID. Let's get that author ID. Book ID dot author ID. Author ID, cool. Now this is actually author. Now when I submit, I want to send another value, which is the actual primary key, which is this one. Now we need to think, how are we going to send this ID on submit? The other way is, why don't we select on page load the problem statement is we have to send the primary key of the borrowing ID on submit. Why don't we try sending this way? Data hyphen borrow ID equal to we'll try sending this and try sending it this way. Underscore ID let's try selecting a value, and over here in the option, yeah, we have borrow ID and we have member ID. Now we have to somehow send this borrow ID over here. So here we have two options. One is the selected member ID. The other one is actually the borrowed ID, which we can get it using dataset. And we are passing the borrowed ID through here, and we are passing the member ID through here. Member ID, you can use this. Cool. Now we are passing the primary key of the borrowing table, and we are passing the foreign key of the member. And in the controller, we have our borrowed ID properly set through the parameter, and we are receiving one more thing, which is what? Which is the member ID. Where is it? Selected member ID. We are getting the selected member ID over here, and we can access it. Selected member ID, and selected member ID, we have to pass it over here, and we have to increment it by 1 and then save it. Let's see if everything goes smooth. Let's return this Think and Grow Rich received by Vishal. Think and Grow Rich. Okay, he has returned it tomorrow. Now two things should happen. One, here it should be the return date, and here the status should be written, and then here in this place instead of 8 it should be 9. Let's hope for the best. No, that didn't happen. In the console, selector option is not defined. Selector option, it's over here. My bad. So we have defined selected option, and this is for member ID. We don't need this. Selected options value and then selected. Cool. Then over here, Vishal has come to return Think and Grow Rich. Yes, there is again an error. In the response, return book, you cannot read properties of null. I'm not sure I have updated. In the controller, I hope I have, yes, we have called the model it says it could not find the available copies. So the first problem is we have to convert this into primary key. We have received the JSON somewhere different, so a little confusion over here. We are sending book ID, we are sending return date, and we are sending borrow ID. Cool. Then, and here is a cleaner code. We have received all those values over here, and we are updating the primary key. We are updating the borrowing table with primary key, and also we are updating the book to +1 because we have returned it. And then let's see. Suresh has come to return his book. Let's say tomorrow. Return book returned. And in place of Think and Grow Rich, let's say there is only one book left. Let's see whether we are able to update it, whether we are able to update this or not. Now, the only thing, Vishal is only remaining. So let's issue one other book to UI Monk and Psychology. And he has asked, yes, we have issued the book today, and in 3 days he would be submitting it. And now over here, UI Monk has come to submit his book, and he has submitted it today itself. Now it's 9. Let's hope it gets converted to 10 back. Cool, that means it's working, and these data are also working. The scope of this video is done. Thank you so much for listening. No, we still have this particular dashboard menus. Dashboard data has to be fetched. Let's do that. Let's quickly create a dashboard stats. So create a router, dashboard routes.js, and then create a controller, dashboard controller.js, and let's properly call those in the entry point here. Dashboard routes, so if someone search for dashboard, we have to properly set the router. It's okay to simply have only one controller. Here it is, dashboard controller. Now here all dashboard stats is a function exports. Here you just need to write the Mongo query. First, make sure to call all the models const book. And then we have member. Then we have borrowing. Everything is right, but there is one spelling mistake on this folder. Using this, we just need to count the total number of documents, and we are sending them back as a response. Now if I hit /dashboard, get is not defined. No, it's defined already. Over here /dashboard VOARD, and we get these values. Total book is 5, and total member is 5. Now actually here there is a issue. total book should be a multiplication of two things, the copies as well. So we have this aggregation done. We are counting the documents available in the total member, and again we are counting the documents with the condition status is true.